Okay, our final speaker tonight has arrived. Chris. He's introduced me many times for talks, and this is the first time I've ever been able to have a microphone and introduce him for a talk. And now my mind's blanking. That's my pain, though. So I asked Chris what he was going to be talking about, and he said, just introduce me as someone who was around at the start of Galaxy Zoo. And I'll take the rest from there. I'll use a phrase that he uses quite often in talks, which is, it's all his fault. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's final speaker, Chris Linton.
Thank you. So I think in a strange way, it all starts with dust. I was trying to work out what to tell you about. I think an origin story is appropriate for a birthday. I do feel slightly like a parent getting up to tell embarrassing stories about my 10-year-old in front of their friends. But it's not embarrassing, it's just about dust. I was a small kid with a telescope. I'm an astronomer because I grew up looking at the sky and trying to understand what I saw there and getting to grips with the idea that despite the fact that I was a small kid in a suburban house in a small town in Devon, I could try and connect what I was seeing with our understanding of the universe. And so I got interested early on in not what we could see, but what we couldn't see. And so I enjoyed looking at the stars and learning constellations, and I used my small telescope to attempt to contribute to science by sending sketches of Jupiter's belt to the British Astronomical Association. I think it was 500 years late for a discovery, all three. I did all of that, but mostly I stood under the stars and I looked at the gaps between them. And I knew that some of those gaps were real. There were actually spaces between the stars, and some of them were there, particularly in the Milky Way. If it's clear in the next couple of nights, you go out and you look at the beautiful summer Milky Way. There's a dust lane that runs down through the constellation of Cygnus. And it's just very obvious that there's a patch where there should be stars and there aren't any there. And I learned that if you go and look in the infrared, or you look with different telescopes, you can tell that that gap is filled with dust, tiny grains of sand, like silicon and carbon, about 10th the size of sand grains. And that dust plays a crucial role in our galaxy, because without dust, you can form no normal stars. So within those dark dust clouds, those are places where stars might one day be forming. And I got very interested in this dust, but it was difficult to know what to do next. If I was interested in star formation, I could look at the Orion Nebula with my small telescope. If I was interested in galaxies, I could try and find faint, fuzzy galaxies. If I was interested in stars, well, I could see those. But an interest in dust is difficult to know what to do with. And so I read about an old experiment, which had been done since the 30s, in which you go out and you put, on top of a building, you put out a washing up bowl full of water and you wait. And I did this on top of the garage at my parents' home, and you wait a month. And the books I'd read told me that the grains of soot, the little tiny particles that accumulate in the water over the course of a month, were micrometeorites, were dust grains that came from space. And I remember filtering them and looking at them and thinking I was holding in my hand stardust. Now that's nonsense. They're actually particulates, mostly from car exhausts. Although there has been there's a twist. There's a recent experiment done by a mad scientist in Norway who's been studying dust in gutters of old buildings and pulling out from an average gutter of a building this size 3 or 4 grains, which are true micrometeorites, and using them to study the interstellar medium. But that's another story. And so that was my attempt to study dust directly. I didn't really get my hands on it. And that's why I was interested in a mission called Stardust, which NASA launched like 15 or 16 years ago. And Stardust was going to fly to a comet. It was going to fly as close as possible to the comet. And it had a detector that was very special. It was a detector made of aerogel, which is this sort of light substance. It's been described as the closest thing to nothing that's anything. And the reason you fly with this stuff is that as Stardust flew through the comet, dust grains from the comet would hit the aerogel and would slowly decelerate and be caught in this gel. And it had to decelerate slowly because we wanted them pristine, so that the probe could bring back to Earth samples of the comet. and stardust. Did that flew past comet built too? It exposed its detector, it came back to Earth, it landed in this remarkable, see if you Google it, it's amazing. There's a heat shield of this tiny probe flying through the atmosphere and it's swinging on a parachute. Plan A was that NASA had 2 helicopters which were going to try and catch this thing with hooks attached to the front of the helicopter. And that failed, and the thing plummeted into the Earth, but the capsule survived. And people who study comets have gone and picked out the dust very slowly from this aerogel, and with it they've discovered amazing things. The main thing being that comets, which exist for most of their life on the edge of the solar system, have material that must have formed close to the sun. So from these grains we've learnt the material in the early solar system is mixed up. But I was interested in another part of the Stardust mission. There were a group of crazy researchers, dreamers about dust, who believe that if you looked at the back of the detector, you wouldn't find anything from the comet. Stuff wouldn't have penetrated that far. But you would have found dust that came in from odd angles during the brief time that the detector was exposed. And the idea was that any dust grains you found there must have come not from the comet, but from beyond our solar system. So they calculated that in the stardust detector, there might be as many as 4 or 5 grains of dust from beyond our solar system, the first interstellar material returned to Earth. And the idea was that they could get a hold of these, that they could sample them in the laboratory and understand whether our solar system was unusual in its composition, and do a direct comparison in the lab between what makes up the planets and us, and our neighbours and our galactic environment. The only problem was that finding these things is really difficult. There weren't many of them. If you want to study the comet, you could just start at the front of the detector and you just pick the grains out one by one. If you want to study this faint stuff, you have to look at the back. And so they scanned the video camera, the detector, and they put the data online, and they invented a project called Stardust at Home. In 2006, they invited members of the public to come online and look at dust. Now, I've made it sound exciting, but they didn't bother to give you the 10-minute build-up, and their audience hadn't had a bite. And so this website did what it said. It turned up and said, "Welcome, help us look for dust." And then you had to look at grey images, which may or may not have had blobs in. If you looked carefully at the blobs, they may or may not have been dust. And after a year and a half of effort, they eventually identified some candidates. And now, more than 10 years later, they found 2 grains of interstellar dust, which are now being studied and which are named after the people who discovered them, the Citizen Science Project. So that's what was in my head when I came to Oxford. I came to Oxford in 2006, around the time that Stardust at Home launched. And by 2007, my first postdoc after my PhD, I was pretty lost. I was supposed to be studying star formation in different galaxies. I worked for somebody who was terrifyingly intelligent, and at 4 p.m. every day would come into my office and have an idea on me. And I didn't know what to do with this, so I wrote the idea down. After 6 months, I had a long list of ideas, and I'd made no progress on anything whatsoever. But I did know that I wanted to study galaxies. And in talking to other people around the department, we had this idea that the shape, it was an obvious idea, that the shape of the galaxy was important. And that we could get more information if only we could get people to look at the 1 million or so galaxies encoded in the slide digital space. If anyone who you listen to this took place in the coffee room or in my office or in the Royal Oak, let's go to the Royal Oak and tell the story. I remember saying, well look, if people will look at dust for fun, surely they'll look at galaxies. And the irony of this is that as the galaxy zoo has expanded into the zooniverse, we've had people look at papyri and crabs and penguins and microbes and microscopic data. I think what we've proved is that it doesn't matter whether you're dust or a galaxy or a penguin or anything else. As long as we can say to people, come and help us do science, spend 5 minutes of your life helping us explore the universe or understand the world around us, people respond in droves. And now it's not dust that inspires me. It's the idea that we have more than 1 million people who have let their lives be touched by trying to do science. And I wish I had a funny joke to end this, because that's all been very serious. But it's been a marvellous 10 years. We'll see you here for Galaxy Z20. Thank you very much.
was fantastic. Does anyone have any questions for Chris about the last 10 years?
I mean, preferably the work.
So, did they found that the interstellar dust, is it any different from what we have?
Now, this is the best bit of the story. So, the question is whether the interstellar dust was any different. There are two grains. One of them is very different, and one of them is not. So now we need to go and find more interstellar dust. And it's not really clear how to do that. So people have proposed a mission to deliberately go and see in a quiet bit of the solar system and just go out. People have also proposed putting these detectors on the space station, which I think would be great. People should definitely do this. So hopefully there'll be a rejuvenation. They're also still looking, so you could still go to Stardust at home. But remember, the estimate was, I think I said 5 to 6 dust grains, and they've only got 2. So there must be more in there, or there's likely more in there. So hopefully we'll find more. As ever, all good scientific projects end with needing more data, and that's true even with interstellar dust grains.
Is something like New Horizons something that is going further out? Is there a program?
No, it's a good question. So New Horizons actually had a dust collector on it. So in fact, it was a citizen science project. So New Horizons offered a bunch of high school students in the States the chance to design an experiment. This is the probe that went to Pluto and is now heading off to a more distant Kuiper orbit. But they had a dust collector, and what that can do is do dust counts. So they discovered, as they headed into the outer solar system, that the dust is not evenly distributed. But that's dust in our solar system. That's the leftovers of planet formation. But you can't. What we can do with dust grains on Earth is very sophisticated chemical analyses. It uses equipment probably the size of this room. We haven't yet managed to miniaturize that enough to get it on spacecraft.
Alex?
I haven't got a question, but I'm wondering if I could have 1 minute to tell the audience a quick story about the Stardust at home. Is that all right?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yes. I apologise for interrupting this programme, but I've got a Stardust at home story to tell all of you. In America, there's a computer networks expert, I forget his exact title, his name's Pietro, and he's very interested in citizen science for solving humanitarian problems. One of them that he wanted to solve is Alzheimer's disease. Now, there's some research that suggests that what happens in Alzheimer's disease is that blood vessels in the brain are blocked by collections of white blood cells, by proteins that are folding not quite correctly. Well, Pietro had a friend and colleague who's, I think his name was Chris Schaffer. He works in a biology lab, and he showed Pietro some brains of mice that had Alzheimer's disease. Now, Pietro loved Stardust at home. He loved classifying dust. And he noticed all these curving, twisting trails that the dust grains were leaving in the aerogel. And then he saw inside the brains of the mice and saw that the neurons were making very similar tracks through the brains. They're much more crowded. I have to admit, I had a look at the 2 pictures and I can't quite see it, but then I don't have Pietro's long practiced eyes. Pietro asked Stardust at home to help develop a project about looking inside brains of mice that had had Alzheimer's disease to help find a cure for Alzheimer's. So Stardust at home does have a habit of inspiring other projects. So all I can say is don't clean your room too much, dust is really helpful. And the project is called Eyes on Owls. So yeah, look it up if you want to cure Alzheimer's disease as well. That's another project I'm working on, but now back to Galaxy Zoo. Thank you so much for letting me interrupt you guys.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, that's a perfect ending indeed. Can we thank all of the speakers on Galaxy Zoo tonight one more time? Thanks so much, guys. Well done on reaching your 10th birthday, and yeah, hopefully see you at Galaxy Zoo 20, and who knows what will happen by then. That's the end of the talks for tonight's event. It's definitely not the end of sales at the bar. And I imagine there'll be plenty of people sticking around, so please do mingle and chat and ask questions and collaborate. Thank you.
Can we thank SciBar as well?
Sorry, absolutely. Thanks so much to SciBar for actually putting on this event and hosting us, and also recording a podcast that's going to be online for the rest of the Galaxy Zoo volunteers and people who couldn't make it here tonight. Thank you so much, SciBar.
Thank you.